All right, so with that, welcome to the introduction to the Generate Users Group. My name is Bill Hennekens. I am with AEM Corporation. And just as I do that, there we are. Okay. So as I said, this webinar will be recorded. We have muted attendees as they enter the webinar. If you have a question, we have multiple folks kind of monitoring. Please raise your hand during the Q&A portion, and we will unmute you, and you can ask your question, have a discussion, and you can also do a chat in or have a message in that chat panel. So please don't hesitate to use that. So with that, we will do introductions. So as I said, my name is Bill Hennekens. We also have with us today on the team Eric Friend, who is the Chief Data Officer and Assistant Executive Director of Special Education at the Oklahoma State Department of Education. That's a mouthful, Eric. And he has agreed to serve as the chair of the Generate Users Group, and we're glad to have him on board. And we also have, as I said, Anthea Brady, Program Manager at AEM, who will be supporting the work and contributing to this effort to work with you all.
Bill, I just want to pause for 1 second. I'm seeing some lag on the slides advancing, so just folks, if you could just send in the chat if you're not seeing the slides advance, and we can work that out.
All right, thank you, Anthea. I see on my side that I am at the agenda slide.
I as well.
Excellent. Okay, well.
I see that too, so we'll move forward. Thank you.
All right, and just with things, this is just a way to convey information, to get your feedback, to get this started. So we can, if we need to pause to kind of technology to catch up with us, we can certainly do that. So agenda, what we want to accomplish for the time we are together. Well, first we want to give Eric a chance to convey a message why he wanted to engage in this and what he sees as the value, the benefits, and what will happen from a gathering of users of the Generate application. We'll talk through the objectives of the Generate Users Group, talk about a bit of a path forward for how the Generate Users Group will evolve and will operate. I will provide some updates on where we're at with the Generate work and the implementations, future development, those kinds of things. We'll talk about next steps and then go through some Q&A, some discussions, because we want to hear from you, and hopefully that can be robust set of discussions to help inform how we do move forward. So with that as a plan, and I will really at this point just say that we are excited to launch this users group with Eric at the helm. At AEM and our work, we are passionate about education data and management, the use of that data, enabling stakeholders to have a voice and an influence in how we do that work. Generate cuts across the work of multiple offices within the Department of Ed. Certainly, OSTEP and their vision to provide the funding to kick off the Generate work and to start it invaluable, but it is branching out. It is definitely across multiple offices within the Department of Ed, and there are others that have interest in engagement from nonprofits as well, foundations, standards body, host of other TA centers. So we really see a need for you as practitioners and stakeholders of Generate to have a place where you have a voice to be heard, and we want to facilitate a community to provide resources to support users in doing that, in coming together and providing a direction, feedback on the evolution of the Generate application. So with that, I want to turn it over to Eric to kind of share his thoughts, how he sees this work evolving and why he wanted to be involved. So Eric.
Thanks, Bill. My name's Eric Friend, like he's already introduced me. I'm not even going to say my title again. That's just because I have 2 full-time jobs, like most of us, or more than that. So the reason I wanted to be involved in Generate and what got me interested in it in the first place was I was talking to a colleague, and he expressed this, was telling me about this program that automated EDFACS files, and we have an EDFACS coordinator here in our state that is very, very close to retirement. And I thought, well, if we could find an avenue to correct or to automate this, then we wouldn't have to really train anybody up real quick. We could have some already processes put in place, and we could move forward that way. And then I started realizing all the things this tool does with CEDS as a foundation for this tool, and realizing that with the combination of CEDS and the Generate tool, all the possible options and things that it could bring to a state and others, and for users to be able to work together and create queries and BI tools and all these different things, just using that CEDS backbone. That just really excited me. So it comes down to the desire to, our desire to collaborate with other states and TA providers and experts in the field in one language and one way to say things, and we can move forward to use the Generate tool based on what we think, us as users and others feel like is really the most important things, and where we need to improve, where we need to, maybe release a little bit off of it, and then. The reason I wanted to be involved in this group is so the states have a voice in what we're doing here with Generate, and we can really drive all the work that Generate is going forward. So that's really why I wanted to be part of this group. That's the kind of the vision I see for us as a group, as a SEA-driven, influential, engaged group that we form to help each other out with current work, when it comes to implementing Generate, or even issues that we have coming up with Generate implementations or anything. We can help each other out, talk to each other, have those conversations together, and really just be there for each other and help each other out, but also have that voice that we can take to Ed and other stakeholders that are, and tell them why this is important, why more funding is needed, why more resources are needed, and how this is really affecting the states as a whole. So we'd like, well, we're going to talk about that in a minute, so go ahead and go.
Okay, I was just going to say excellent, excellent, Eric. Appreciate that, and we're very pleased that you have stepped up and want to chair this and really have drive states to help each other and to set the direction for Generate. So appreciate it. So with that, we want to learn. Who's on the call here? Who is interested in this? What's the spectrum of folks that have signed up and are on this webinar? So Anthea has activated a poll. You should see off to the right, and we will pause and give folks some time to check the appropriate box. Anthea, do you have a way of seeing how many responses we have?
Yep, we're about 3/4 responded, so maybe we can give a few more seconds.
All right. Well, thank you. That information, really that data will be helpful as as Eric and team that come together around this, think through engagement in the future, and who is interested in that in this work group, and it's valuable information. So appreciate you completing that. So with that, Eric, let's have a discussion around the. Anthea's sharing the results I see there. So
yeah,
a smattering of folks out across CIOs, EdFax coordinators, IT staff, special ed staff, and others. So I know that we have a lot of TA providers on, so I'm assuming they're in the other category. All right. Well, helpful. Thank you, Anthea. So, Eric, a path forward for success of a user group. You talked about give generate users a voice and empower passionate stakeholders. So, we want to at AEM to listen, to hear your concerns and your impact. So. If you could talk about how you see the agenda being driven, talk about support, maybe a discussion around complex issues, being a united voice, creating advocates. These are some of the items that we really see as successful for a users group. So, your maybe thoughts around these items and how you see us achieving these successes.
Well, I think that through just our normal conversations that we have, a lot of us have, I'm involved in several different groups, and I get to talk to different types of people, like I'm part of the CIO network, and I'm part of the special ed data manager group, and we see each other all over conferences, and we talk to each other on the phones and conference calls and webinars and whatnot, and we kind of hear some of these issues that come up. So and then even offline, we'll talk to each other from time to time through email, through phone calls. I feel like that some of we could bring back like I could, or others could bring back from some of those conversations that they're hearing, where they feel like Generate could create a solution for that, so that we could bring those items back, and that could help us drive that agenda. Also, we could also have we should be having meetings on a consistent basis to kind of help determine what agenda items need to be brought up. As far as complex issues, that's kind of exactly what we're struggling with now. Where do we see, what solutions do we see as complex issues? I know Generate, before it was really launched, right as it was launching with Nevada as a pilot, we got a big users group together in person in Utah, and then again in Wisconsin, Minnesota, somewhere. We were getting into Kansas City, and I feel like we were working through some really complex issues and I really think that kind of, maybe not in person, but even on the phone, where we can kind of talk through some of those complex issues that we're seeing. I think that's what we're here for. That's what the users group is there for, so that we can say, yeah, I understand that that's your what you think we should do, but here's where I see this going, and the users, that's given us that voice, and I really think that that's where we need to be going. Product feedback is kind of, I mean, to me, that's self-explanatory. I think that if we had that open and honest and communication, I think that that's going to take care of itself. and absolutely, we would be a united voice to not just AEM, but everybody's kind of saying the same thing to ed representatives, to other potential users that may want to know more about it. We're all kind of saying the same thing. So as long as we're all on the same page and we're kind of saying the same things, that would create those advocates and those just opportunities for Generate to succeed, and for us to make, it just makes our lives easier. Let's be honest, it just makes our lives easier. Generate does, and CDS as a backbone obviously makes it just everything easier for us.
Well, great. So, to make this path forward successful, we who are going to support states, because the goal of this and what really for it to be successful, it has to be state-driven. So, Anthea and I supporting this effort, we need to make joining a community, registering for events like this webinar, or participating when we may come together at conferences. We need to make it easy for you to be part of the conversation, and you have our commitment that we will do that, and that we will listen to you on what works. So, provide feedback on the webinar, what we're doing today, and on future things. We want to focus the discussions on helping you do your job, to using, as Eric said, Generate is something he is looking to, and many states we've discussed it with, making your lives easier, to doing the things you have to do more efficiently. So how do we do that the best possible? How do you do that the best possible? So helping you do your job and your organization being successful. And we really need to have participation by peers to influence the knowledge that you have and draw upon experience. And we have learned a lot with the pilot in Nevada. Well, we didn't look at the list here exactly to see if Glenn Meyer, the CIO there, is on, but hearing from him, what can he share with you all? I think that would be valuable, and others that we've been working with in Nevada, and as we implement with more states that will soon be using it for child count files and additional files. What is there to be learned, and sharing that information. So those are how we will. We, behind the scenes, will work to facilitate those kind of conversations to meet the goals that really Eric's talked about and set out, and he's communicated to us what he wants to see out of this users group. So thank you, Eric. I believe next we are going to do another poll. So Anthea, if you pull that up. So with the information, hopefully the slides have caught up, on what an expert basic awareness or little to none knowledge of Generate. If you could let us know, that would be appreciated and help us kind of guide what we do in the future. And those who are TA providers, if you could not respond, we want to hear from state staff, right? That's the target. So please, TA providers, hold off on answering this particular poll.
I wanted to mention, Bill, that we have that. We're going to have an in-person meeting for this users group, and I don't know if we're going to mention this later. I don't think so, but for this users group, we're going to have an in-person meeting at the SLDS Best Practices Conference. Is that not correct?
That is correct, and Anthea will elaborate on that
in a little bit.
In a little bit, yep. But that's an excellent point, Eric. We absolutely will be, and we'll take the advantage of when, certainly may not be every single person that wants to be intimately involved, but we need to take advantage of times when we can. I'm
looking forward to that. I actually thought that was going to be another one of your get to know Generate presentations, and I was like, okay, I've heard that 37 times. I don't need to hear that again. But I look forward to having an in-person meeting.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue, Eric, to this poll we're doing. For those that are experts that I'm not sure where we're at, Anthea, in terms of responses, but you don't need to hear the what is Generate. So the 16 respondents that say they got a basic knowledge, through a presentation they've heard me do, as you said, 37 times already. You don't need that. You want to dive in a little deeper to some things. But the folks who have little or no interest, those two will work for, we'll look for an alternative way to get additional information. So it's good. I'm glad that we've got a lot of folks with basic and kind of the expert where they're at with Generate knowledge. So, and very good segue.
Exciting.
So, with that, thank you, Anthea. Let me talk a little bit just about the status of where we're at with Generate. So, should see now a Generate status slide. So, no surprise, everyone knows that we have piloted Generate and the 16 files that are the core of the IDA data with the state of Nevada. Actually a team of us were just there this week, and they are excited to move forward and to use it another year and to do some additional files that I'll talk about in a couple bullets down. So everyone, you have friends in Nevada, they owe a thank you because they in a way stuck their necks out with us and said, "Ooh, this looks good to us. We're willing to give it a try." So let your friends in Nevada know you appreciate that. So past that, where are we at? We are currently working with 13 states to implement Generate, to move data into that CEDS backbone that Eric talked about, either for data that will be reported from this current school year, so the 17-18 school year, or data for the next school year, the 18-19. There's just different states and different cohorts of school year to kind of spread the work around. So we are very excited that we're with that number of states and been able to really build off of the success in Nevada. So, building on that, as I said, we started with 16 of the IDA files. We're now, in terms of files, meaning the outputs developed in Generate for the EDFACS reports that you all need to submit to the EDFACS reporting system. So we started with 16 IDA files. We supplemented that to build to a total of 33 files. Those include Common Core of data and some CSBR2 files. And we are right now working through a list of the additional files, and depending on how much TA work we do or development work with this additional SLDS TA funding that we have, we'll collaborate between helping additional states implement Generate and do additional development either towards nearly all of the 80-plus files or very close to the 80 files that are within the EDFACS reporting requirements. So, we talked about this a long time ago that Generate would be the vision of it is a total solution for EDFACS reporting, and we are on that path. So we will, continue to update you on that, and certainly have some areas that are a priority from the states we're working with right now, it's good work. So next, collaboration with EDFI. Many of you know about the EDFI standard, the work that they have done in the community for some time, and so we have two efforts going. First, in the state of Nebraska, we are doing work in collaboration with the folks at EDFI to move data from the EDFI operational data store, so that database that is implemented in several states, implemented in Nebraska. We are working with them to move data from that EdFi operational data store into Generate to automate EdFacts reporting for Nebraska. And that's work that some other states could repurpose. Other states that have implemented the EdFi API could make value out of that work. Second, we are developing from the API EdFi standards, essentially building onto those so that those EdFi APIs can be used to move data into Generate. And this is work that your colleagues in Kentucky are very interested in, and will really allow those with vendors that have adopted the EdFi standard and have the certification to use the APIs to move that data to really plug in Generate on top of it. So exciting work, and is really also driven by you, by the community. You know, you're working with them. You see the value of the EdFi work and what they bring to the table, and we do as well. And so because you wanted us to do that work, we wanted to do that work and to meet your needs. So, we're also willing to, whoever we need to cooperate with to make Generate work to meet your needs, we are willing to do that, and hopefully this demonstrates that that's where we're at. So just a status update on where we're at with Generate, and so now I will turn it over to Anthea to talk about next steps and how you can get involved. So, Anthea.
Great. Thank you, Bill. So first, and Eric and Bill have mentioned this already, we're definitely looking for volunteers to help assist Eric as co-chairs for this group. So he's really taken the plunge with us to be the chair and get things going. But we'd love to have a representative from SLBS, EdFacts, and state reporting to bring that different point of view and background into the group and help with the leadership and direction. And that's a great access for those members of the team, as well as the larger group joining the user group, to have access to the leadership teams who's involved with building Generate and really get to know what's happening with education data. So you can reach out to Bill, to Eric, or to me if you're interested. We know a few folks have already expressed some interest around this area in being involved, so we will follow up with people who've already contacted us in the next few days. Eric alluded to the pre-conference session at the Best Practices Conference, and it is going to be more than just your traditional Generate demo. It's a 3-hour session, so we're going to dive deep into what is the user group and what is the intent of this group, and get a little bit more into the weeds than we are today. We'll get hands-on with the Generate tool, take a look at the demo, or do a live demo, so take a look at what its capabilities are and the opportunity to ask questions around that. And then we'll have some time set aside so states can really problem solve with how Generate could contribute to solutions for reporting, challenges around data submissions. I know, things that we hear from one state, which we know probably are taking place around the country and around your different types of reporting. We want folks to be able to come together and think through those solutions. We are planning to hold a webinar in March, so to try to have events monthly, be they virtual or gatherings at conferences like Best Practices and at StatsDC coming up in the summer. Feel free to drop in the chat box if there are conferences coming up that you'll be at that you think would be a good opportunity for this group to get together. And I will turn it back to Eric. We're going to dive into some discussion, and for folks who want to chime in, you're welcome to send your responses in the chat, but you can also raise your hand in the WebEx tool, and we will unmute your phone line. So that's also an option.
Well, thank you. I'm really just going to read the question, but I'm going to let you guys read the question. But we're just trying to get an understanding of what you want this group to accomplish that can help you support, or can help you support your work. So if you'll raise your hand or tap something in the chat box, like Anthea said, we would love to hear some feedback and talk more about where you think you want this group to go and what you think this group could accomplish concerning Generate.
And Eric, I'm going to read some of those that come into the chat.
Perfect.
So one is hoping to avoid pitfalls and would like to know issues discovered implementing Generate and the best practices.
Well, I haven't. We're in the middle of our implementation, so we've come across a few, but I mean, I don't want to get way down in the weeds in that yet. But we have come across a few, and I'd love to share some of those pitfalls with all of you. But we do have. I've talked to several different people from several different states that have run into, a few little quirky things when it comes to implementing Generate inside your own structure. So it gets a little, but that gets kind of gets down in the weeds to really talk about that. But yeah, that's a great idea to make sure that you kind of we can share some of those ideas so that we can avoid those as we're implementing this work.
We have another interested in lessons learned from states implementing Generate.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Collaboration on documentation, from mapping to navigating where you are, where your SLDS is. And Minnesota is currently planning EdFi implementation, and they're interested in understanding how the EdFi data mapping work can also anticipate or plan for Generate integration similar to Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few more, so if there's any you want to reflect on, I'm going to.
I've had several conversations with the EdFi team. We don't have any EdFi. We don't have EdFi ODS in Oklahoma. But I've had several conversations, and that tool is really, really interesting. And excited for the states that have that opportunity to use EdFi, and can't wait to see what the work turns out like in Nebraska. So yeah, I would love to include some Nebraska folks, and I know Dean is up there, and a couple of other folks that from around the states that will be using that. So absolutely, I cannot wait to see what the end result is there with the EdFi implementation, and hopefully hopefully I can convince Dean to be part of this group, so we can. If he's not here, I'm not looking at the attendees, but I can probably convince him. So he'll be instrumental when it comes to that EdFi implementation.
And I have a number more. So to provide a voice nationally to improve the ability to manage and use education data. There's one question, and we'll actually start to get to it on our next discussion topic, but sort of have the ability to use tools that others might create and have a repository where lessons learned and documentation, communications, things can be shared and available across members.
Great idea.
Opportunities to learn more about professional development, training, coaching, and other supports that will be provided to staff implementing Generate. another state who's in progress with implementing Generate is happy to learn from the user group about any issues that they may face upcoming. And then a request to know just who's out there, what are the states using Generate, and provide an opportunity for connection between people who are a step ahead of other states in using Generate to have someone to contact and reach out to with questions.
I absolutely agree with that. I could not agree with that more. I wish that my colleague that we all probably know that is no longer in Nevada, I wish that he was still there, because I really wish I could reach out to him and say, hey, what's up with this? Because we had that relationship where I could just do that anytime. So, but absolutely, that is a very important piece of this.
And then one more question, which is, what is the long-term plan to make this information openly accessible? So maybe is there a website? And Carolyn, if you want to provide any additional information in the chat there, if we're not able to answer your question fully.
I think that that's something that we could, Carolyn, I think that's something we could discuss more in depth in one of our, either WebEx's webinars upcoming, or possibly in one of these in-person. I don't think we have a website currently, but like I knew exactly what you're talking about, the IDC resources, et cetera, something where all this stuff can be housed. I love the idea. I just don't know that we have that in place yet, but it's something I'm definitely interested in talking about, how we could do that. It kind of goes along the same line as a repository for best practices and documentation and resources such as query work, report work, all that stuff that we can share between states. So I totally agree. Possibly it could be on the SID website. It's possible. Maybe I'm speaking out of turn probably on that.
No, you're not speaking out of turn. You guys need to drive the direction. What works for you? What makes sense? No, there's no speaking out of turn, Eric.
Bill, there is the question that just came in about what will live beyond OSEP funding. Do you want to answer that in reference to some of the other work that you were talking about with the EdFact files?
Absolutely. So, Generate is slowly growing beyond the initial kind of seed money, if you will, that OSEP gave us with this grant funding to work with you all to get this started. What will live beyond OSEP funding, the vision for it, we want to work with you on. We certainly have ideas, right? We come into this blind, so we have ideas. We want to get your input on that, and then it's part of, and I think Eric has alluded to this, part of the value and benefit of this group is you all, and with a united voice, communicating to the Department of Ed on your expectation for how Generate lives and evolves beyond the start that we have with the OSEP grant funding. Certainly it's going to take resources somewhere, right? And if we do the right work, it's going to be valuable for you, this solution, and you're going to want it to continue to move forward, to be a resource that's available to you that also doesn't become stagnant, that evolves. And so you helping us in terms of what that evolution is, then also you all communicating to the Department of Ed on the support that you believe is needed to make that happen is another, I believe, critical aspect of this group and how it can move forward. It's one thing for us at AEM to have conversations with You know, we hear from states, they want this, they want that. You know, we want to try and meet these needs. It means something different when you all tell them that directly. And so we see this as a forum for you all to come to, you know, driven by your needs and your interests, to come to what those are and the priorities for them are and communicate those to the department.
Well, and to piggyback off that, Bill, at the end of the day, this Generate tool, this CEDS backbone, whatever standard, it lives in our system. So even if you know, worst case scenario, AEM, you know, Jim just quits and Bill and all them, they just leave one day, then and this just ceases to exist, we still have that ability, and that's kind of where I'm looking at this users group going. Even if that didn't exist, AEM fell off the face of the planet, then we could still work together to make this project work. Now, I hope that we continue to get all the support in the world for that, and I will absolutely be the biggest proponent for that. But at the end of the day, I think that that's what this user group at the core is about: helping each other, being there for each other, you know, helping each other work through these issues and moving forward with this stuff, with this work.
Excellent. Well, yeah, we're, you know, can't speak directly for Jim, but you know, I don't know that he has any plans to go anywhere else. I have no plans to go anywhere else. We're committed to this work.
Absolutely.
So, you know, we'll move forward. Certainly, folks like your friend from Nevada that you referenced will come and go, but you know, a core of us staying together and moving this forward for the benefit of states, I think, will be valuable. So with that, I think is a good transition, Anthea. Thank you, Eric, to this next slide and discussion topic.
All right. So I have to plead a little ignorance here. I've never run a user group before. I've never chaired a user group. I've been part of many, but could you please let me know what you think other successful user groups that you've been involved with, have created, been part of, however, give me some ideas. What have they done to make it successful? And just give me some feedback on that topic, if you would. And I think it looks like Anthea has opened up a poll.
Yes.
Also, about what methods we should use for communication and sharing with members. Should it be a listserv, a document share, or web-based space, or something else?
Right. So Anthea can read anything in the chat that we get, and you know, let us know. I like the way you put it, Eric. What can we do to meet people's needs?
And so, Bill, there's a question about the ownership of Generate as it relates to ongoing updates and software.
Yeah. So you know, we and the department definitely, you know, in a collaborative way are on the hook for updates, right? You know, the EDFACS files, you know, they churn over every year, right? And there's always a little tweak here and there. So, you know, that is definitely part of the understanding and part of the discussions with OSEP, that there needs to be continued support for Generate so that we can continue to do those things. You know, not only do EDFACS files tweak and get adjusted here and there, but you know, occasionally new elements come into our scope, right? The classic one I always talk about with states is the military-dependent children, right? So that's a new element defined in CEDS. There's new reporting around it. So you know, that means there's updates. So yeah, we're on the hook with the department to make those updates to you know, so that the tool continues to meet your needs, right? It has to be updated like that to meet your needs. I see there, Carolyn, oh, go ahead, Anthea.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I was going to read that question. I'm going to close this poll. We do have one more that will open up.
All right.
Okay.
So I'll read Carolyn's response. As far as needs, do we have a definition of what is in scope or what is out of scope for the group? Is there anything that this group won't do? You all need to define the scope. What does Generate need to do for you? How does it need to evolve to meet your needs? You don't want 100 different things to meet your needs. And so what can we do? I
think that as long as we're generally speaking, of course, I think you're right. I think we do need to more definitively set in what is in scope, what is out of scope. But I think generally speaking, when it comes to this users group, we're talking about anything that basically touches the EDFACS file reporting realm and how Generate works with that, and how we can improve that process or document that process, or anything that has to do with that general idea of EDFACS reporting and the Generate and the Generate tool, and how those two things are related. I think that's pretty much in scope generally. So that's going to include some SLDS work. It is going to include some things that are outside. They're bigger ideas than just Generate specifically, because to get to the Generate specific, you have to get the bigger ideas in there too. So, but that's just generally speaking. I think we do need to sit down and really kind of come up with a specific scope.
Sounds good. So, Anthea, were you able to unmute Jim so he could address one question?
Yes, Jim should be able to take the floor.
It is such a good strategy for you to keep me muted. So way to go on starting this. So I'll just say, thank you. These are really great questions, and I'm glad to see the group is already poking and pushing and kicking in some ways. And that is, I'll just restate some of what's already been said. That is really our desire for this group, is to empower all of you as the practitioners, the stakeholders out there in the field who are dealing with education data management and use on a day-to-day basis. What I'll say to some of the questions in terms of, where does this live, and ownership and ongoing support, is that from our position, our being, AEM, which is the grantee for SID, which is the contractor supporting the SLDS work for the department, which is the contractor supporting the department with the Common Education Data Standard, which is the grantee from the foundation, Michael Susan Dell Foundation, building out EdFi Connection. So our place in this conversation is that we, most of the people that are on this call that are from AEM, we come from the state, right? I was in the state of Oklahoma, Bill comes from the state of Washington, and many others. And we are passionate, frankly, about supporting all of you with that education data management and use objective that rests on everybody's desk on this call. And that's what we're about. How that looks, how that unfolds, what tools might be created to support that, all are driven from that. So Generate is really your tool. We're building it through this grant from OSEP. We're expanding it through technical assistance from SLDS. We're leveraging the work the department's done with the Common Education Data Standards so that at its core it's got a data structure that is open, known, and has been developed by all of you all. We are building this to support your day in and day out work. Ideally, to Eric, if everybody up and quits one day from here, it's gonna be a short life for me. I need Bill and company around. But the reality of Generate is that we're designing this thing, we're building it. We have the vision of you don't need us around. Frankly, for as long as we can possibly be around, expanding it, providing additional support and value add to the states, providing TA available to you for ETL work, for, as Bill indicated, to ongoing update and maintenance as EDFACS maybe changes or additional federal reporting requirements come out or new data elements are defined within CDS. We want to be involved in that. But we're building the tool in such a way that you can pick it up, that your IT shop, if that's not you, could pick it up, that there's guides, there's documentation, there's supports around it that would enable the state to be self-sufficient with Generate and still be able to take advantage of what, this system built on the Common Education Data Standards connected with EDFACS really provides all of you. So I just want to thank you for giving me a chance to just jump in here on that, because I want to make sure that this group understands that clearly. But it also is why we stepped forward and said we want to facilitate this. It's not funded by a contract. It's AEM investing in all of you, because in order to hit that vision of creating something that you all own, that you use, that is important and impactful in your day-to-day management and use of education data, we have to have you driving that conversation. So you can mute me back again, because everybody knows, and Eric clearly knows that I'll talk forever. But I just wanted to jump in and make sure that we had that as the context for a driver behind this, but also what our vision is for this tool.
Excellent. Thank you, Jim. Eric, thoughts?
Well, the only thing I could think of when I was listening to Jim, other than agreeing with everything he was saying, I had to think if everybody quit, that would just be exactly what he deserved. And make sure that you've got him muted now so he can't come back. And but I like to give Jim a hard time, being a fellow Oklahoma guy. But I completely agree. I like the idea of states being able to take up the mantle and continue on, regardless of the status of, because we just never know. That's the thing. We just never know what's going to happen. And now trust me, like I was saying earlier, I will be the biggest supporter of AEM and Bill and Jim sticking around forever, because that just takes a lot of things off our plates that we don't have to worry about. The updates to the file specs and everything else. I just love the idea of you guys being around and helping us out with that. But worst comes to worst, you have built it absolutely with the guides, with the documents in place where we can take the mantle if absolutely necessary. And that's a little harder for people like me, because we have centralized IT, and I know there's some people out there like that have to pay an IT shop to take over, but it is possible. And it is something that's in-house and not something that, AEM just like owns and it's like proprietary and you can't use it anymore. It's not like that. So I love that fact. And I think that this users group could help each other with the progress of that, if that were ever to have to be the case.
Well, excellent, Eric. Thank you very much. Anthony, if we've kind of exhausted the information or discussion around this particular topic, and we're really close to the top of the hour here. On the next slide, you'll have our contact information. We collected up some good data, if you will, from the conversation today, the polls, lots of the chat information. We will collect that up, and we will get with Eric and strategize with our colleagues that are hosting the SLDS Best Practice Conference. Kathy Gosa is going to be involved in that, and we will also work to reach out to some additional folks to support Eric and be thought partners in this going forward, and plan for some good state-driven work, content, information sharing at our next gathering at the SLDS Best Practice Conference. If you are planning to attend that and you have questions about it, go to one of us and we'll get you the right people, or your SLDS state support team contact absolutely could help you as well. But if you have any questions, let one of us know. If you want any feedback, want to provide direct feedback on how this went or how you see this evolving, you've got our email addresses there. And with that, Anthea, anything else from you?
Nothing else for me. Thank you, Bill, and thanks, Eric, for leading us through a really good webinar. I'm glad folks really got into it on the chat. We have a lot of good ideas to go from.
Yes, agreed. So, Eric, I'll let you have the last word. Thank you, everyone. Have a good afternoon. So, Eric, last word.
Last word. We'll hope to see you at SLDS Best Conferences, our Best Practices Conference. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.